Oh, God, it's been a little while. Let me just clean off the screen here, and I think we can fix that music a little bit. There we go. Okay, much better. Hi, everybody. Welcome to finally another Cities Skylines video and another video on this channel. This was for the Cities Skylines Global Build-Off Airports Edition. Paradox reached out to me and asked if I wanted to participate, and hell yeah, I'm all about airports, which is why I start with train tracks. Really, this build is something I'd actually wanted to be working on in Cities Skylines for genuinely probably 5-6 years now. I remember writing down a list of stuff I wanted to eventually make, and this was on it, and that was back, like 2017 or so, maybe. I think I just graduated from college, or maybe it was just about to. Anyway, I'm getting beside myself. This is something I'm so excited to finally have made. Require a bunch of cool stuff, a little bit of maybe cheating in the global build-off, but it's finally here and it's finally done. So at the moment, you saw I kind of kicked off my airport build project there with, of course, some train track planning. And now I have drawn out the sort of area I want this to take place in, and I'm tracing around to try and kind of loosely mark out what's going to go where, what should go in what spot, I guess. Really kind of just placing some buildings that I'm planning on using. You'll notice in addition to some hangars, I put some factory buildings there. So that might give you a clue if you haven't, read the title of the video or watched the cinematic showcase that Paradox put together or done anything else like that in a way that you already know what I built. But anyway, I finished kind of plotting everything out, went to build the runway, and of course realized I did a normal area and not an airport area. So I started with that, realized that I started my terrain in the wrong spot, so it was leveling to the wrong part of the map and the wrong height, and then finally fixed that. So a little bit of terrain work here just to try and gently slope this down into the water line, the sort of swampy area we have on the map here, which I had tried to kind of keep but wasn't super successful, before drawing out a 1-to-1 scale runway for the real project. So this is a super interesting airport in real life. I guess I'll give it away now. It's Renton Airport, Renton Municipal Field in just south of Seattle, Washington, in this town called Renton, of course. This is basically your tiny little general aviation airport. Bunch of Cessnas, maybe some seaplanes and things that would serve Puget Sound up there. And then also a big-ass factory where Boeing builds the 737. So it's just this wild kind of combination of two completely different airport uses. And you get these tiny little, like flight school stuff and also brand new multi-million dollar jetliners. So I thought this would be a fascinating thing to make, use some custom assets and everything. Of course, as I say that, you immediately see that I am putting down a passenger terminal. That's because I couldn't quite get this to work with an aviation club. I wanted to obviously have custom runways and taxiways and things, and the aviation club just wasn't playing super nice, and I was on a tight deadline to get this done for the actual event. So I took inspiration from the other Boeing factory airport up in Everett, north of Seattle, which has a very small little commercial terminal. So either a couple flights a day that fly up to Everett, Payne Field, I think is what it's called. So I just went and built this tiny little terminal. I think it's a little bit larger than I would have wanted. You'll see I expanded a little later, but I needed to do that just to get space for a medium gate. At the moment, I'm working on the parking lot where I'm, for genuinely like the first time, messing around with Node Controller. I have not really played Cities Skylines and built something in a while. I've been really working kind of behind the scenes stuff. Presidio Bay is of course still coming. I'm really sorry it's taken so long. I've had an enormous amount of real life stuff get in the way. But it's also meant that I haven't been able to really jump into Cities Skylines and start working on things. So I'm just for the first time playing with network multi-tool and node controller and all these other things, which is a lot of fun, but pretty daunting. So now that that's the terminal sort of placed down, I wanted to get this airport kind of up and running as quickly as possible. So very simple taxiways going on. I start working on the plane stands just so I know where the taxiways are going to go. And then you can see I'm trying to use network multi-tool and all these different mods and things to see, can I shrink that median stand? The answer is kind of no. So I have to rethink my stands and node controller comes in handy here. So I'm messing with it, trying to figure out how the hell does this mod work? I see a lot of people using it and it's really awesome. And I'm trying to figure out a way to just make a slightly narrower portion of concourse, which I do figure out eventually, so I can have a medium stand and have all the ends of the plane stands all line up, which is what I want. So right there, you can see kind of shrink that down, end up going for the sort of blander, like rather than the kind of nice curvy glass wall node, just the standard one, which makes it work, I think, a little bit nicer. It sort of looks like a seam between the two. Maybe the other one was added at a slightly different time, or tell some sort of a story. I'm not quite sure what, but more importantly, it let me get the ramp all 4 gates square, even the medium gate. Now, of course, that's modeled a little large for the area, with the 2 jet bridges and whatnot. I probably still wouldn't have any, but I wanted to have a spot for my 737s to come service, because I wanted to have 737s taking off from this runway, which of course would be like new ones from the factory. So right here, I'm messing around with procedural objects, another mod I don't have a ton of experience with, to kind of build out the sort of back of house area on the concourse. So this might be sort of baggage claim or just sort of standard administrative facilities and things for this part of the airport, maybe some crew areas and like maintenance staff, janitor stuff, maybe some garages for some of the vehicles. And then, of course, our little tiny control tower, which I auditioned in a few spots before deciding to stick all the way over here on the end. I feel like that had a pretty good view of everything. Doesn't quite look like how I'd really wanted, but I really like the kind of very small control tower to use. And of course, as with every airport, including FBS, it's time to abandon Surface Painter and go for the classic strategy of the ploppable concrete brushes, and then in this case, the network shoulders, which came from the FBS project, which proved to be a huge help in this one. It's sort of amazing having done some of these from scratch with highways and things, which just before that, before these networks existed, and just how much nicer and easier it is now. So I'm tracing these out and carefully placing them to the side to just slightly overlap before I realize that really makes these too wide. So I go back in later off camera and push them all closer in. There we go. I guess I do this little one to give you the taste, but yeah, there we go. I cut the rest out. So after that, it came time to once again watch me fumble around with procedural objects, where I am working on covering this runway up with some nice, gigantic, ploppable asphalt. So I did this because I wanted to have a slightly wider runway to match the prototype, as well as some really cool kind of... Oh, crap. I remembered the word. I swear I remembered the word. Offset threshold or something? Oh, God. Anyway, I wanted to do custom markings and things, so I had to cover this up. Man, not remembering that word's gonna kill me. But I'm too far in to pause it or look it up. Anyway, I'm sure it'll come to me. This is just using procedural objects here. I'm like really carefully trying to line everything up. And then I think I go in and darken it next after just carefully aligning all these, making sure they're all correct. Because I like the texture on the blast shoulder and I don't want to have to redo that. So a little bit, I think, here we go. Is this when I color them? Or? No, I sync them down a little bit. Yeah, so I'm working on this displaced threshold, I think is what it's called, maybe? I don't know, but I'm still gotta figure that out. So I'm using Move It here and adding this kind of very cool wide end of the runway sort of thing with a little bit of blast fencing on either side. Obviously not going to be used much for the tiny general aviation traffic, but when the planes come off the assembly line, you need that blast fence. So I got to put that in, which was nice. Here we go. Redoing the runway thing. I think I gave up a little bit on trying to figure out procedural objects for a second. I went, I really do need to do it with these instead of the classic just a million props strategy, because these you can recolor really easily, which is something I do later. So now that I'm a bit smarter with procedural objects and constantly trying to use Maya controls and things on getting the interface to work, of course, I finally get this nudged into place and all covered up. So we get that nice fresh tarmac. The real airport's pavement was was redone fairly recently, so I wanted to kind of capture that nice dark runway look. So yeah, we're going on now and just making sure the planes take off looking pretty good, and make sure they take off in the right spot. Before now, I thought about trying to figure out a way to use a circle or something to get these working, these sort of blast pads over at the end, and I gave up on that. I just said, you know what, screw it, I'll just do it the old-fashioned way. I will make a bunch of squares with the procedural objects thing instead of just using the props, because I wanted that darker color, and I will very, very carefully kind of put them in to make a sort of low poly curve. And then, of course, just patch over the middle. So there you go. I've got this great, cool runway shape at the end. And then what's really nice is I can just select them all and copy them and stick that whole thing right on the other, and I'm done. So that was a huge help. Just trying to make sure that none of the original runway is poking through. I'm okay with the lights poking through because they're slightly hard to see, and I don't think there's a mod to get rid of these ones quite yet. I know the old airport runways had a mod to remove them, had a mod that weirdly tanked performance, but yeah, these ones I don't think have them. So it's time to do some runway markings. And first I think let's do this, and then I'll just manually, I'm just like, wait a minute, that's gonna be awful. It's gonna be such a hard way to measure them and make them even. So using Move It and a little piece of network drawn out to, I think I did like 20 meters, 10 meters or something like that, or units or whatever it is. So I just go and place it side by side with some extra network segments on there to measure before plopping it in place. So wait until planes are on the runway at either end so I can actually make sure it's on the center line, or at least the center line that planes use, and it comes time for the numbering and things. So this was all remembering stuff from FBS and comparing it with Google Earth, and thankfully, again, this is a small airport, so all I need are the piano keys at the very end, the numbers to number the runway properly, and then touchdown markers, and that's it. So really handy. Definitely nothing like FBS runways or any runways for a major modern international airport, which will have all sorts of landing markers and touchdown markers and different things to show you how far down the runway you are. This line connotes the actual end of the runway, because the rest is the displaced threshold, which I'm pretty sure that's what it's called. I'm going with that at least. I'm gonna say it in a confident enough way to make you guys think that that's what it is. So yeah, got these arrows, needed to convert them to PO just because they were slightly too low, not over the PO runway, concrete or tarmac, asphalt, whatever you want to call it. I actually really liked using PO for this because I could use the little the gizmo or gnomon or whatever you want to call it to actually move them and line them up all manually, which was nice. Then, of course, came time to place down the threshold markers or the stop markers for the taxiways, and then cover the end of the runway in a ton of dirty decals and things to simulate a few years. It's not quite as like slick, shiny black from rubber as you might expect, a much older runway to be. But of course, that PO surface is really plain, so I had to get kind of crazy with the decals to make it look nicer. Next up is the general aviation area. So in real life, this area is actually kind of all the airport except for the Boeing side of things, which is actually across a little river, which I thought was fun. Almost did here before realizing I really didn't want to have to pay a lot of attention to the terrain. So with a little bit of node controller helping me shrink down taxiways to general aviation plane width rather than jetliner width, I began to just go and place a nice row of hangars, and that's really kind of all this area is. It's just 2 rows of hangars, which each have their own little taxiways to get over to them, and then a big empty area for people who are okay parking their planes outside, which, feel free to do if you want to, if you can't quite afford a hangar or don't think you need one, or maybe you have 2 planes in 1 hangar. So thankfully, there are a handful of nice general aviation aircraft props on the workshop. A little hard to search for, I found, but ended up fine. I think I got a nice amount of variety, including some really fun seaplanes, which I have kind of on land here. The real airport actually does have seaplane facilities, which again I almost built, but just decided to stick with the land planes, mostly because I wanted to have it, almost everything kind of animate and look nice. So With that said, I had to shuffle that over to be more in line with the highway instead of the other ramp because I thought it looked a little bit nicer. And then I just went and made an access road here. And this was kind of a fun little challenge to figure out like how the access road should work for general aviation. You want to make sure that people can drive to their plane. Looked at a handful of other general aviation areas at various airports and just decided that, you know, if you have your own plane here, you just drive past the commercial terminal, which again is a little overscaled to real life and would probably only see a few jets a day, none of which would actually have jet bridges and things. But anyway, it is what it is here. So a little bit of ramp markings to show you what's taxiway and what's ramp over here, as well as a hold marker for actually intersecting the more substantial taxiways that might see much larger planes. You know, you don't want to be in your Cessna and taxi right after a big jetliner. You'll just get blown all the way back to the hangars by the force of the jet turbine. So anyway, a lot of surface painter and more concrete brushes here, and then wear decals to kind of show everything coming in. Tried to bring some of them into some of the plane parking spots, which were marked out with, I think those are just regular concrete panels. In real life, I noticed that a lot of them had nice white markings, but I didn't have good decals for that, and kind of liked the concrete pad looking ones a little better. In real, you just have to kind of imagine. Got a lot of detail. I remembered this from FBS, which was really handy. So using ploppable asphalt as asphalt patches, so places in the concrete that have had to be repaved or whatever, and they're slightly newer, so it's a little bit darker. I thought that looked really good. So additional vehicle access, I added some jet blast fencing. Obviously no jets over here, but just some blast fencing to kind of, it's a nice airport looking way to keep everything off. And then a handful of planes. There's some Grand Caravans in there, which might be a little bigger. So either rich guys' private planes, private propeller planes, no jets, or, some very small little airline that might provide commuter services, commuter plane services, or some tiny services to some nearby islands or something. Security was the next step to go. Found a fence, used the classic Beard Monkey security thing. Found a decal. The Brodix's small decal looks like it's the same, their small drain decal. Looks like it's the same texture as what Colossal Order used on the industrial road there, which is kind of fun. And then some, I think they're Japanese fences and things. And then just went and traced out the airport. So that's actually going to be the end of part 1 of this video. That's right. In classic fashion, for me, I recorded way too much, so I'm splitting this up into 2 parts. This first part was the civilian side, and the next part is the factory side, which will start off with modeling the new models I made for this project. God forbid I play strictly by the rules and use what's available only on the workshop and everything. You gotta go with custom assets when I'm working on a project. So that'll come in the next couple days. The whole thing is edited already. It should already be scheduled to upload by the time you're seeing this. So subscribe if you want to see that right away. It's a really fun one. I'm really happy with how that side of the airport came out. You can kind of see it over here. It's a nice little teaser. And in any case, that's going to be it. Presidio Bay is coming pretty soon. I'm really sorry for how long it's taken. We're trying to make sure it's the absolute best it can be. So in any case, that's going to be the end of this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm B. Squeichelhausen, and I will see you next time.